we're sorry. We know transmission lines can be an eyesore. We know wind turbines can be noisy. We know transmission lines do slightly increase the risk of a fire. And we know that when our contractors come onto your farm to install this critical infrastructure, they leave gates open and they bring weeds and seeds on their boots. We know this and we are sorry. We're going to do better, but we need your help to build a better Australia. We need your help to create jobs, promote regional development. We need your help to increase national security, to help us better weather the tides of rising energy prices. We need your help to provide power so we can implement drought resilience projects, such as desalination plants. And we need your help to increase the grid resilience. Look, we've made some assumptions. We know the farmers don't want these projects, but why? We're not 100% sure on that one. There's several misinformation, there's misinformation everywhere, but a lot of these misinformation claims are highly believable and based on half-truths. So it's not entirely the farmers' fault for believing this. So we want to nudge the farmers to be more open to these transmission lines and of a high-impact energy solutions. We've done this in 3 pillars. Our first one is reframing the value proposition. Now, climate change matters, but to the farmer does not care that much, to be frank. What the farmer cares about is his family, putting food on their table. The farmer cares about helping his mate fix his tractor. The farmer cares about helping the guy on the side of the road with a flat tire. The farmer cares about his family, his community, and his country. So our first strategy is to reframe the value. Move away from the climate change agenda. We want to push these projects are for Australia. These are patriotic endeavours, and we hope that the farmers can see and appeal to their desire for community. Our second strategy is co-benefits. Now, we've got 2 main ways of looking at this one. The first one is we want to pay the farmers fairly to use their land. We are decreasing their productive capacity by taking advantage of their land, so we want to pay them royalties that cover the costs that they lose by having these transmission lines and wind turbines and whatnot on their property. Because we think that the farmers deserve to be paid for their land use. Our second strategy is built around community. Now, if you've ever been to a regional town, you will know they're dying. There's no opportunity, there's no infrastructure, and there's no people. These towns are dying en masse, and this is really sad to see, and it's causing people to quit farming. So how can we bring people back into these communities? Well, we want to incentivize these communities to implement these solutions, and we see the current political climate as a great opportunity to do so. So with the rise of manufacturing and onshoring occurring, we believe we can use these energy projects to bring energy-intensive manufacturing back to Australia and help revitalise these regional towns. We also want to use this energy for projects such as dams and desalination plants so we can help these farmers become more drought resilient. Our third pillar is cultural appropriation. Now, this may sound strange to you, but let me take you through a story. So imagine you're a contractor and you've just got done building a power line down in southern Queensland. You get in your truck, you pack all your tools up, you drive 10 hours north to build the next transmission line. Now, you drive onto the farmer's property, you open the gate, you drive out, and you start building. You have just committed 2 sins against the farmer. The first one is your boots. When you're moving between 2 different farms, it's vital that you clean your boots to prevent weeds and seeds cross-contaminating crops. Now, you didn't know this, and it's not your fault, but this is dangerous because these seeds can completely destroy a farmer's livelihood by devastating their crops. The second one is you left the gates open. Now, if you've ever been to a farm, you know the number 1 rule is always leave the gates as you found them, because doing not so, you can end up having cattle and animals move between paddocks where they're not meant to, and again, disrupt the farmer's livelihood. So we want to work with unions and contractors to help develop a set of ethical principles so that when the contractors are on a farm, they are as minimally invasive as possible, such as working in off-seasons when the farmers are not utilising their land.
So you might be looking at all that and think, wow, that's great, but what does this have to do with combating misinformation? So to really tackle this, we went back and tried to understand the journey that these stakeholders go through when they're faced with misinformation. So the first step is awareness. Somebody comes to their property and says, we're putting these power lines through your property. What they then do is they're interested in that project. They're going out and they're finding information that supports their idea. They might not like it. They form that opinion pretty quickly. And they're evaluating this information along the way, and they're deciding whether or not they trust it, whether or not they believe what it says, whether they can feel that. And what that does is it forms this reinforcing loop back to the interest. the more they have this idea that it's bad and they don't want it, the more that they're going to seek out information that supports that idea that they already have. Now, let's pause and take a step back for a second and go back to the beginning. If we address the issue at the awareness stage, when we come to the farmer, we give them a choice. Instead of imposing the power lines on them, we say, hey, we give them the option, but we make the option so appealing, using those strategies that we mentioned before, that they have no reason to say no. They want these power lines going through because they see all of the other benefits that are coming through. We're appealing to their patriotic desire, all of these other values. At this point, when they move on to their interest, evaluation, and decision stage, they've made up their mind positively about this project. It's framed in a positive light in their mind, which is going to lead in the action stage to them taking steps, taking real measures that are going to help with these infrastructure projects. They're going to support them rather than actively resist them. So now that we've got them on board, let's go back and look at how we can implement these.
Okay, so now moving on to the implementation timeline. So as you can see on the board, we do have the 3 different strategies and the different implementation timelines for each strategy. But the biggest concerns and discoveries we've made is what I want to address in this session. So on the right, we can see that we went through like 100 different websites and we found out where this misinformation is coming about. And as you can see on the graph, it's all along the eastern coast of Australia. And we believe this needs to be tackled down. So we want to do more market research. Like I handed you a piece of paper, which basically shows what we provide and what we propose you ask these farmers to understand why the people on the East Coast are so against this policy, whereas the people on the West Coast, they're not that against. They're fine with this. And the other thing we really want to bring about is the pilot program. So we want to try out our policies in Townsville. Like as you can see on the sheet, we've identified 10 key places, and Townsville is a low-risk place. And we want to test these strategies out in Townsville to see if they're effective, and the whole ongoing loop about the implementation process, reviewing our policies to see if it's beneficial or not is the next steps we'd have to take. And finally, the question about scalability is there. So we need to take into consideration if we can scale these policies, and always going back to the feedback loop, always reviewing, implementing, doing more market research to really find out, is this policy was providing the best to nudge the people? So now moving on to the next slide, it's in risks and mitigation. So we've identified 6 key risks. The biggest 2 risks are the miscommunication and the lack of trust, which you can see are the significant and more likely risks. And how to combat this is to ensure all the communication is jargon-free and it's clear and concise. And for the lack of trust, it's to be transparent and to be respectful in the method you communicate to these regional people. And the final thing I want to touch upon before we end this is the political backlash and the public backlash. And we don't know where these risks will go, as the government is about to introduce or may introduce a bill talking about misinformation, and we're yet to see the effect and impact this has on the backlash of the public and the political sector. So basically, that's all we have. I'll pass it to Henry.
So help us through helping Australia develop strong energy independent policy. Thanks, guys.